Hello, and welcome to the Growing in Business interview series. I'm your host, Flemming Johnson, and today I'm joined by Mark Saad, who is the founding partner at Sherpa Collaborative. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. Would you like to kick us off with a brief background as to who you are and what you do?
Sure, Fleming. Thanks for having me. So just to give a quick background, I started my career in the consumer product space. So I spent a lot of time in Asia, in factories and in East Asia and China, Vietnam, Thailand, Japan, sourcing products initially for the mobile home industry. So I was importing light fixtures and ceiling fans for that industry. And then over time, I had a desire to create my own brand. So we started a footwear company called Feel Goods, where we were making eco-friendly footwear. We started out with all natural flip-flops made from natural rubber in Thailand. We were able to get that into Whole Foods market. So we sell Feel Goods is still sold in every Whole Foods in the country. Scaled that business up. I exited that business in 2018. And then started helping another startup in the consumer product world called Headbands of Hope. Founder was Jess Ekstrom. They were kind of in the same position that Feel Goods was maybe like 3 or 4 years before. And so I kind of knew that playbook. But I better knew like what not to do because I learned all those things the hard way. So I was able to help her avoid some of those pitfalls. And we also scaled that company, ended up selling that company to a private equity group um, in 2021. So that was also a great experience from early stage startup to exit. And in the meantime, in 2019, a couple partners and I started a company called Sherpa Collaborative, which you just mentioned. Both of my partners were also serial entrepreneurs who had been through starting, scaling, and exiting their own companies. And we all had a desire to work with startups and help founders navigate those waters, which was where the name Sherpa came from. And we initially started by doing a lot of consulting work um, with startups that had been financed and had backing. But then that kind of morphed into investment opportunities because when we were consulting, we realized, well, some of these companies are really taking off, but we're not really participating in the upside. So we need to really move towards more of an equity model. So we invested in a few companies. We acquired a couple e-commerce companies and grew those. And then over time, we built out an internal digital marketing team, which was something that all of the companies in our portfolio needed some help with. We also built out an internal accounting and sort of fractional CFO services. Those were all initially just for our portfolio companies, but then that sort of expanded, and now we offer that to any and everyone that needs it. So that was the experience at Sherpa. Um, the company has grown now. I think we're probably up to about 10 or 12 folks on the full-time folks on the team. So that's been a great experience. And then more recently, I've been spending the bulk of my time with a design firm in Raleigh called Lout Design, where we work on a lot of product development. So the main theme in all that background is really I love consumer products. I love figuring out a product market fit and launching and seeing it on shelves in major retailers. So that's where my focus has been for the most part.
Very, very good. Thanks for that update. And tell me, what inspired you to start your own business? What was that initial spark that kind of led you to take the entrepreneurial leap?
Yeah, I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family. My parents immigrated here from Egypt in the late 70s and started a company called Garner Appliance and Mattress, which was kind of a big retailer for uh, appliances and electronics. And so it was really all I knew. Like me and all my cousins, we all grew up in that family business. We all spent our summers there as kids or as teenagers working in the business. And so to me, entrepreneurial activity was the norm, and I always had a desire, if you would have asked me when I was 5 years old what I wanted to be when I grew up, I wouldn't have said astronaut or fireman or whatever everybody else had always said, like, oh, I want to own my own business. So I don't know if that's nature or nurture, but it was sort of always there for me. And I love sort of the flexibility. I love the potential, like, for earnings, right? Where you're, instead of having a job where you might have a ceiling as far as how much you can earn. I like the entrepreneurial approach where if you hit it big, the sky's the limit. So it's really exciting and really rewarding work.
So, what are some common misconceptions about running a business, and how do you address that?
Yeah, there are a lot of those, right? I think a lot of people that haven't been in the entrepreneurial space have some romantic notions about what it is, and then when they get into it, they have some rude awakenings, maybe. So some of those things include, like I was just talking to someone the other day who is a phenomenal digital marketing person that wants to start freelancing and start their own digital marketing company. And I said, well, right now, as a digital marketer working for a larger sort of like corporate entity, you just have to focus on marketing. But if you're going to start your own business, you also have to learn how to, like, keep the books and, potentially down the road, like, hire employees and manage employees. And I think people, they think like, oh, well, I can just run my own schedule and I can work when I want to and all this kind of stuff. And the fact is, it's 24/7, right? Like there's no 9 to 5 if you're going to run your own company. Like, it is all encompassing. I mean, I was on vacation last week with my family, and we had a closing going on where we were actually selling one of our companies, and I was up at 4 a.m. responding to emails and doing what had to be done and making sure things were happening the way that they needed to. And then, going to do stuff with my family, but always like having to check my phone and take calls and things like that. So, especially in the early stage of a company where it's scaling, there's no vacation time. There's none of that. You have to be ready. But I think that's why being passionate about what you're doing is important, because it doesn't feel like you're working 24/7 if you love what you're doing and you're passionate about what you're building. But I think that's the number one misconception. I think people view it like, oh, my schedule's gonna be great now, I'll have plenty of time. And it's like, no, it's quite the opposite.
To the point of schedules, how do you maintain a work-life balance as a business owner? Do you have any personal rituals or habits that keep you motivated and focused?
Yeah, I'm an early riser. I think that's a big one, right? So, I was kind of figuring it the other day. Like, if I get up every morning at 4:30, and I get a couple of extra hours of productivity, right? Which, that doesn't mean that I have to be up and I'm like working on like really complicated things. Sometimes it's just responding to some emails, or just like thinking about what's coming up that day and getting organized and things like that. That ends up being, if you do the math, like basically like another month in your year if you're adding 2 more hours a day, right? So that's a big one for me. Just having that time in the morning before my kids get up, where there's not distraction, or a lot of things that can pull you in different directions, right? So, for me, waking up early and being productive and kind of being organized for my day makes a big difference. And then when my kids do get up at like 6:30 or 7, like, I'm present for them. And, to your point about work-life balance. And that's a big one for me. I'm also like a very big just to-do list guy. Like, every morning when I get in the office, like, my routine is that I make my list. And I kind of have this rule where it's like, I don't leave that day until I'm done with everything on that list, unless it's things that, I'm waiting on things from other folks. But yeah, those are two things that are really important to me: waking up early and making that time productive. And then also making sure that I have a clear idea at the beginning of the day of what needs to be done that day, to move forward.
Excellent. So tell me, the business environment is constantly evolving, the landscape
Hmm.
ever changing. How do you stay adaptable and open to change? Are there any specific strategies that you use to remain innovative?
Sure, yeah. I think most good entrepreneurs are comfortable with change, right? And I tend to be excited about it and be very optimistic about change, and very comfortable with it. To stay up to date with the latest and greatest, I try to surround myself with much younger folks than me. Like over here at Lout Design, we've got a lot of folks that are in their early to mid 20s, like kind of fresh out of school. And I'm 38, so that there's a pretty big gap there. So I love to talk to those folks and just understand, like, what are you using right now, like especially in the world of AI and places like that. Staying around, even if it's people that are, like I said, I'm 38, and somebody that is 33, right, just 5 years younger than me, that doesn't seem like a big gap. It is actually a really big gap between, that's the difference between somebody that grew up with social media in high school and someone who didn't, right? So just staying around younger folks, understanding where they're spending their time or what tools they're using, even if a lot of that still goes over my head right now. Even if I can get it on a surface level is really helpful and informative for me. So those are the techniques, is really just staying around people that are on top of their game. That's the biggest one for me, and staying ahead.
Now, could you now offer us a glimpse into your future plans and goals for your business? What do you envision for the next chapter of your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. When you're in the founder seat, like I said, there is no work-life balance. Like, it's 24/7, like you're always in it. Um, and over the last few years, through after a couple of these exits and the work we've done with Sherpa, it's nice to be not in that founder seat anymore, but more on like the investor side or the advisor side of it, which is a lot of fun. I think what the next step looks like now, if I went from founder to sort of investor advisor, I think the next chapter for me is to more formalize that, where that I've had ideas around creating a fund, to manage assets and to help other investors get into more of the like private equity startup investing world. I'm doing a lot with commercial real estate too. I've developed some commercial real estate, so this could be a fund for that. So I think the next chapter for me is to move into a place where I'm not just doing angel investing and sort of my own things, but maybe formalizing a firm that takes on investment capital from others that want to be in that space, manage those assets, deploy them to either startups or real estate projects, like I said before, and that allows me to continue working with founders, but do it in a way where, like I said before, we're participating in the upside, and we've got equity in those companies. So I think um, something in that direction is probably what's next for me.
And now, what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs who are, say just starting their journey or facing some challenges in their business?
Yeah. Well, if they're just starting, um, I always encourage, early entrepreneurs, early stage entrepreneurs to avoid uh, like focusing on perfection, right? Because when you're in that world, your resources are very limited. And it's really easy. I talk to people all the time that they've been working on the same startup idea for like 4 or 5 years. They're people I would call entrepreneurs, right? Like, they're always talking about this idea, and they're like, yeah, we're close to launching and all this kind of stuff. And then I see them 6 months later, and they're in the same place that they were. And my advice to them is always like, just pull the trigger, right? It's not going to be perfect. It will never be perfect. And if you're a perfectionist, like, that's really difficult to do. But I just tell people, look, there will be iterations. No matter how much preparation you do, there's going to be issues. Like, just launch it and just improve on it. That's all you need to do. And you'll find that a lot of people, when they take that advice, like, yeah, it's not perfect, but they're really glad that they did it. Because they're starting to realize they're getting feedback from clients, or they're, like I mentioned before, that product market fit, they're making tweaks to that because they're actually getting feedback from the market. So my advice is to just, like, don't over plan. Don't spend too much time like trying to make every little detail correct. Just put it out there. Some people will like what you got as is, some people won't, but that's fine, and you can tweak and make it better. So that's always my advice to folks that are sort of like right on, getting ready to take that big leap of faith, but haven't done it quite yet.
Very good. Thank you so much for your time today, Mark. And also, it's been great to meet you and learn more about your own entrepreneurial journey. And to everyone else who's watching, we look forward to seeing you in our next episode.
Yeah, great to meet you, Flemming. I appreciate the time, and look forward to staying in touch and talking more about topics like this.
Sure, it sounds great. You are, as you recommend to others to be a bit in transition, you're in a bit in transition yourself, sounds like.
Sure. Always. Always. For like, I like the early stage of companies, like figuring out that product market fit, getting it off the ground, getting, revenue to a certain level. But once it gets to a certain level, like, I'm kind of ready for the next thing. So yeah, there's always transition. And like I said, I love change. I'm comfortable with it. So yeah, it suits me well.
And you always have a product focus?
Yeah, that's definitely been the history. The consumer product world has gotten a lot more difficult in the past few years. Manufacturing prices have gone up, shipping has gone exponentially higher. So that world has become more difficult. But yeah, I mean, Sherpa is a service-based business. Lout Design is a service-based business. So I kind of like that. Now, those services are typically to support someone that's in the consumer product world, which is better. And again, that's moving from that founder seat to that advisor seat,
Right,
which is a lot more comfortable.
right.
But yeah, no, I still, I still love walking through a retailer and looking at all the products and looking at the point of purchase marketing that they're doing. Like, well, oh, I wonder why they chose this sort of packaging, or this kind of stuff. So yeah, it is core to me, and I do love it, and we'll probably continue doing it, even though I badmouth it sometimes.
Thank you again for your time, Mark.